Welcome back to the Manage to Win podcast. I'm your host, David Russell, and today's episode is sponsored by Habitly.com because we all need to learn the essential people skills to thrive in our profession, in our career. And quite frankly, that spills over and helps us in our personal life. So if you're struggling, you don't have enough time in your day, check out Habitly.com. If you're not achieving goals very well, check out Habitly.com. If you're having conflict or you got people being mean to you and they're triggering you, and how do you deal with that? Check out Habitly. We have courses there for you. The first 7 days free, Habitly.com. Gotta love it. Now, today's episode is with Jeffrey Deckman. Now, he has created a conscious leadership mindset model. He just published a book, Developing the Conscious Leadership Mindset for the 21st Century. And he's done a lot of work here. He's had business success. Now he's working with small to mid-sized business so that they can be successful based on this model of being more consciously aware of what's going on in your business and with your people. Let's dive in. Good conversation. Jeff, welcome to the podcast. I've read your background. I've looked at your book, and you've got some interesting things to talk about with conscious leadership. So please introduce yourself to the audience, and let's dive in.
Okay. Well, I'm a bit of a hybrid. I have had a tremendous amount of experience in the trenches, building businesses, and I've also spent couple of years in a think tank, so I'm a cross between going into the etheric and also being in the real world. So my strength is I see next generation stuff, and then I figure out a way to operationalize it, and then I figure out a way to teach it to other people so that it shortens their learning curves and helps them to accomplish the goals they want quicker than if they were to try to find it on their own.
So what was the think tank experience?
Well, in 2005, I sold my last company. I had built two construction companies, one in the cable television industry. I started that when I was 26. So from 81 to 87, we designed and built cable television systems in 4 states. We got out over our skis with that. The business became really complicated, and we went under. So in 87, that business crashed. And I looked and I said, geez, what am I going to do from here? Should I get a job or should I start another company? And entrepreneurial's dilemma was that I didn't feel as though I was done, but I also proved that I was an idiot and I didn't know how to run a business. Right? So I thought, maybe I should get a job. I had a wife and a child, and another one on the way, and a new house. But I thought, I'm not done yet. And if I take a job, I'll never start another business. If I start another business and that doesn't work, I can still get the job. So one decision allowed me to keep both alive. So I went into that, and I get into the telecommunications industry. So I went from cable television to telecommunications, rode that wave just when it was starting. And after about 21 years of that, I got bored, and I sold that company because I wanted to. I realized my passion was to help other small to medium-sized businesses build their businesses with less aggravation and stress and fear than I built mine. So I decided I was going to be a consultant. I didn't know anything about how to sell thinking. I just that's what I wanted to do. So my life normally has been identified by, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I did know what I couldn't do anymore. So I kind of pushed myself off the edge and built my wings on the way down. So after the first 2 years, I didn't get any real consulting business, except I was hired as a political strategist for 2 years. So I made my living as that. And then I had 3 people who, 2 of them had a think tank, and they got together and they said, we would like to invite you in as a partner because we think you're doing some interesting thing. So for 2.5 years, we worked together. There were 4 of us. It was called New Commons out of Providence, Rhode Island. And what we were doing was we were looking at what changes were occurring culturally within society, within the business world as a result of the new millennium. The industrial age was over. We're entering into this new technology information age where so many rules were different. And we wanted to take a look and say, what is changing and what do we need to develop? What skills do we need to develop to live in this new world? One of my partners was dealing with disruption and resiliency. Another partner dealt with communities and urban. The third partner dealt with women's issues and leadership, and or women's issues in business, and I was focused on leadership and organizational development, because I was looking and seeing we've got the four most independent generations in the history of humanity in the workforce, and none of them like command and control. And the business world's changing so fast that the linearity of the org chart is not flexible enough to deal with this new world. So what new leadership models, mindsets, models, and methods do we need? What organizational development methods do we need to develop to become more agile, fluid, and responsive to keep up with the new generations and the new rate of speed and the complexity of business? So I spent a couple of years in that, and that was quite fun.
Oh, I bet. And coming out of 2 years of as a political strategist, that may be another podcast to just, talk about that. But let's stay on the leadership side.
Yeah.
So, all that sounded really compelling at a 20,000 foot view. Mm-hmm. So is that what drove ultimately this conscious leadership approach?
Yeah.
Or what?
Because I'm a small business guy, I had to figure out a way. So I saw all these changes and I said, okay, well, these changes are coming and are hitting every business person. And what can I do to help them adapt and transform their organizations? It's not enough to change. Our conditions have transformed. They haven't just changed. So because they've transformed, we're in this post-pandemic era, we have to transform our leadership methods, models, et cetera. But we have to make them operationalized. So what I was looking at is what systems can I develop that I can go in and I can sit with a woman or a man that owns a small business. And to me, that's anywhere from $1 million to I've done up to 150 million, right? They're not corporate, 500s, et cetera. I like working with owners and I like making a change. So how can I go in and give them some tools and processes that they can start adapting, that they understand it's not overly complex, and that they can start to transform their organization without really disrupting it? The challenge is you just can't stop your organization and come up with these new systems. You have to redesign the plane while it's in flight. So that's what I've done. And one of the things about my systems, they are born from some pretty complex thinking. But the more you learn about them, the more you realize how much you already knew. They're very intuitive. And a lot of them are based on tribal dynamics, psychological dynamics. And so I can go.
Okay, well, you keep getting me with these big things like tribal dynamics. I want to dive in there, but I'm more. So as you've dove in and done this, what are some of the before and afters? Because you obviously identified things that were wrong, mm-hmm. and then you're going to go in and propose an alternative. And I love the way you're saying, we're going to basically put the wheels on the car while it's moving, or, you use two analogies, jumping off a cliff and getting your wings or whatever. So, and this other one, what about some before and after, examples that people can grasp?
Yeah. So the main thing I do is I help people maximize their ability to tie into the collective genius of their workforce. And primarily, most of us have been trained under the model of kind of a hierarchy, command and control, top-down management, and layers. The people on the front lines, they don't make the decisions and they don't have that much input. They have some, but they don't have that much. Most of that thinking's done in the management level. And it worked really great in the industrial age. But what we have to do today as leaders is we have to specialize in communication, collaboration, and facilitation. We have to go from being command and control top down to being able to engage that workforce more in a conversation and a cooperative dialogue, to be able to identify what's working in the company and what isn't. And what solutions can we have to work together? Because when I was on the front line, and I started as a lineman and a tower worker, right? So, and I saw a lot of things that were not working in the company, but nobody ever asked me to. So those people on the front lines are brilliant, and they know what's wrong in the organization, and they also know a lot about how to fix it. So what I do is I help leaders, business owners, to be able to, first of all, recognize the power of that collective genius that's sitting there, and not to see it as something to compete with. And then I help give them the tools to be able to tap into that and to get that collective genius to be, those people to be speaking to them. So there's barriers that have to be broken down. There's old mindsets that have to be broken down. And it's really not that hard. It's challenging because, any type of change like that is a bit challenging. Like, you mean I don't have total control? I can't just go in and tell them what to do? It's a little bit easier than sitting down and saying, okay, what should we do? It feels like it slows down the process. With the beginning, it does, but it allows you to gazelle with your results much quicker because you're getting that. When you get their collective genius going and you get their input, you also get their energy.
So is this what you talk about when you talk about organizational trinity? Because you brought up three things. Or is that something different?
Well, the organizational trinity is actually, when I talk about that, there are three forces that exist behind the org chart that drive all performance, all productivity, and therefore all profits. And they are tribal dynamics, knowledge networks, and culture. So when you look at departments aren't silos. The model we have of the org chart shows us that they're silos and they're linear. But that's not how people interact. We're tribal animals. It's in our DNA. So I teach people I work with to see their organization as a tribe of tribes. And like the sales department is a tribe. They have their own language. They have their own goals. They have their own leadership. They have their own culture. They have et cetera. Engineering is different. Construction is different. And when you engage your teams as tribes, that increases your dealing with them as humans instead of boxes. So those subtle little changes really they seem small, but they're very big because the people feel you engaging them differently, so they engage you back. They feel you seeing them and asking them, so they respond to that.
How is it separated from the culture piece, or how is it connected to the culture piece? Because I would think the tribal piece is part of the culture piece, but you got them separated. So why do you have them as distinct entities?
The reason I have them separate is because in order to explain how the system works, I have to show you the key components. But in reality, they all swirl. Organizations are complex adaptive systems. They're always shifting, changing, et cetera. And there are three driving forces. Like I said, there's tribal dynamics, and that identifies, who do they follow? How do they listen? How do they treat one another, et cetera? What are the dynamics if I go in and engage them that will get them to engage me back? Culture determines the level of consciousness of the organization. If you have a low level consciousness, the culture is going to be barbaric. Fight with one another. They're going to gossip. They're going to be at each other's throats, that type of stuff. It's a low level, it's a barbaric level of consciousness. That drives the culture, which affects tribal dynamics. And tribal dynamics, if you have the right type of tribal leader in there or the wrong one, that's going to dictate the culture, right? So you can go in, what I do is I help people understand these different dynamics. And then I say, look, this is what you can do in this space to improve that space. Or if your organization is sick, which a lot of them are, a lot of people under stress and, a lot of conflict in organizations, this is how you can go in and heal it. And there's an interplay. And the other thing that I do with the knowledge network piece is I don't look at teams as traditional teams. I look at them as like knowledge networks. And I designed computer networks for 20 years. And I realized probably about 7 years ago that the four components that you need to design a high-performing computer network are the same components that if you apply to building a team is going to give you a high-performing team. So what I do is I look at each of those teams as knowledge networks. That reminds me as a leader that they are smart. That's a powerful intellectual force right there. It's not just some people that work for me. And because of that, that keeps me in a position where I'm looking to engage it. I'm looking to invite its input, and not just so that I can make people feel better. None of this is about kumbaya. None of it. What it is about dealing really high performance teams and maximizing your human capital. Because if you maximize your human capital, you're going to make your financial capital.
Okay. And so that brings up the question of where does accountability play into the model?
Accountability, and this is what's really, really cool about this model. Right now, the traditional model unfairly puts so much pressure on the leader to make things happen. Right? There's management, there's metrics, and man, if I'm not watching and if I'm not measuring and if I'm not going around, it's just not happening. So with this other model, what you're doing is, tribes respond to peer pressure. People don't follow processes. People follow other people. So you can have all the processes in the world and procedures, but if you're hired onto a place and nobody really follows them, you follow what the people do. So what we look to do is with the when you start building a network and you start working with that tribe, what happens is the tribe wants to be high performance. People want to perform high. There's 70% of the workforce is not engaged at work, but 70% want to be. And the reason is because we're not doing the leadership model right. So what we're doing, what we do is the peer pressure of, you get this group and they get some pride in them. They then start to hold themselves accountable because this is our team. This is our project. We want to succeed. We want our team to win. So when you create these teams and you build them appropriately and you support them appropriately, and you hold a high expectation and you encourage them and you tell them, look, you guys are doing a good job. You're all Navy SEALs. Let's get this thing done. That activates that part of us inside of us that wants to achieve. And then once you get a group that's like that, they will, if there's a bad seed that goes in there, they're going to do one of two things. They're either going to work that seed out or they're going to work it in. And that individual, because we're tribal animals, we don't want to be thrown out of the tribe. That's what the peer pressure is, just positive peer pressure. What happens is that person is looking, saying, I really don't want to be outside of the tribe. So they will either step up or they'll look to go and work somewhere else. So the accountability as a manager, like people go, why would I ever give up the command and control stuff? And I say, because it makes your life easier. That holding accountability is now a distributed responsibility that people are intrinsically motivated to take up and do on their own. And I've done this with a bunch of different companies. I've gone in, they were really dysfunctional. I'm working with a group in Indiana that was really separate, good people, but really separate and clanging around. And this work has really brought them together. They see themselves as various tribes. They see themselves as a high-performing team. And now they hold one another accountable. And the ownership just kind of needs to go in and spin that plate every now and then. I tell my clients, you shouldn't manage people. If you have to manage people, you have to fire people. You manage conditions so that you have a healthy workplace and a supportive workplace where responsible people can come in and do really good work. Because most of the people want to do good work, and everybody's smart.
Yeah, I agree with that. We use TTI assessments, and they teach, just to give them credit, you cannot motivate anyone, although they will assess motivators or driving forces. But you can only create an environment where they motivate themselves. But still, I want to go back, Jeff, to the accountability piece. So these tribes, so I've got a tribe. I'm part of a tribe.
Yep.
And we got a member of the team's not doing the job.
Yep.
How do you recommend they work on that? They resolve that situation?
First of all, if they can't work it within themselves, then there is absolutely a process where it gets elevated. Okay, so the first thing is that the group tries to work on them. You have somebody who is a leader within that group, and they try to work on them using the principles and the practices. And then if they don't work, you put them through a process that allows you to, you write them up. You may have to do something else. You might have a 3-strike, then you're out rule, because, we live in a litigious society. So we do have to operate within good HR practices. So there is an escalation process, but that's the second step. So a lot of the stuff that I'm working on is preventative maintenance. Let's keep it healthy. But yeah, if you've got a problem in there, then you have to increase and apply some additional pressure to try to get that accountability. And you absolutely have metrics. You absolutely have goals. You absolutely have timelines. You don't throw that stuff away. It's like the org chart. You don't throw it away. You just don't run your organization by it. The org chart's important to say who works for who and in what department and that type of stuff. But you need to look deeper than just that. And once you do, and you look at that, those 3 forces behind, and that's what you work on, and that's what you manage. It supports the functionality of the org chart.
Okay, so let me shift gears. Let me shift gears a little bit. So when you talk about a conscious leadership mindset,
Yep.
What is that?
That is, I have, and I've been a pretty unconscious leader for many years. So, I've gone through this journey. The saying is, you teach
You're not
what
alone.
You most need to learn.
Yeah.
Right? I really need to learn this, because I was a command and control and an ego-based leader, and I had X amount of success with a lot more stress than I needed to. I went through a couple of major transformations in my life. I had stage 4 cancer in 2016. I went through a big spiritual transformation about 20 years ago after a divorce. And I started to really look and see that the person that was causing me the most problems in my life, I looked at every morning. I shaved his face. And I started having to look and say, I need to make sure I get my stuff straight before I can expect to go out and lead anybody else. So in my book, I say that the first step on the path to leadership is an inward one. And so are all the rest. Like, if I can't lead and manage myself and my emotions, how can I expect someone else to grant me the authority to lead them? And also just to touch on that, because I want to go back to a point you made earlier, where when you've got one good group, one good tribe that's killing it, where they're really doing well, they're a role model. They're kind of inspiring the other group. And that's, again, what you're alluding to, which I agree with, that as a leader, you can't stand up and say all these things, but you don't do them yourself. Right. You have to be the ultimate role model, whether you like it or not. Right. And if you don't like it, get out of it.
Yeah.
Right. And if you don't love people, don't lead people.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You just can't. And people are aching for leadership. And right now, because of the way society is, all you got to do is look anywhere and you see ego-based, narcissistic-driven leaders.
Yeah.
That is a patriarchal, hierarchical, industrial age mentality. And we're just past that. We need leaders. I like to try to simplify things so that way I can understand them and I can teach them better. So instead, you can't just tell somebody to stop doing something without giving them something else, right? Otherwise, they go back to the old way. So we have ego-based leadership, which we see all over the place. And what we want to do is we want to embrace leaders as elders. Like when I'm in a situation and, I have an ego just like everybody else, I get flustered and I want to go in and go, well, I'll fix this. Right.
Yeah.
But that's a low level of consciousness. So what I do is I go, wait a minute, what would my inner elder do? Because we all have this really wise elder. It's our higher self. It's our consciousness, depending upon what spiritual belief you might have. You call it soul, call it whatever it is you want. I don't care. It's independent of the mind. It's superior to the mind. The mind doesn't think it is, but it is. And it's that voice that suggests that maybe you don't hit send on that email that you're about to flame somebody on. You're, and it's like, I don't know. Is there another way we can do this?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
and it's usually a soft voice. It's not the one screaming at you. The
right,
negativity voices are screaming at you. Go get
right.
them. You can win
And
this.
that's, and one of the things, because I had to learn how to map my ego, right? Like,
Yeah.
when do I know it's my ego and when's my elder? Well, the first thing is it has a different energy. The elder is pretty calm. It's wise, it's laid back. So what I do again, is I tell myself, when I feel the surge, resist the urge. Because if I'm getting a surge of emotion, whoa, wait a minute. Now, I might still, after I think about it for a little bit, I might still come out with an edge, but only if that edge serves that person, not satisfies my need to take something out on somebody.
Maybe that should be part of our driver's training requirements, before somebody gets a driver's license, to stop all the road rage.
Yeah. Well, I'm that's what it is. We're crazy. When I went through the cancer experience, I would do this thing every night. It was awesome. I'm going to write an article. I write for Forbes.com, and I'm going to write an article about what cancer taught me about leadership. And every night I would have a tribal council. And before I go to bed, there were 3 people in the council, 3 entities, right? One was my body, one was my mind, and one was me. This energy source, this consciousness in it. And basically, here's what it did. Okay, guys, how did we do? Right? The body was magnificent. It was doing everything it could to just keep me alive, and all I had to do was just do the right thing. And I learned to love my body and respect it. It's a brilliant, dedicated servant. So the body was always doing good. The mind was my problem child. I didn't want to eat this. I didn't want to, exercise. I didn't want to go through wham. And my goal was to try to keep my mind, like I couldn't stop it from doing I couldn't stop it from thinking the way it thought, but I could control how I acted. So then the third part was, how did I do? Was I my elder today? Was I responsible? Did I do the types of things? And every night I would go through that. And so it was almost like I had a little management meeting. And
where was the elder in that?
The elder was my who I am as a consciousness, right? Okay, beyond my mind and my ego.
Okay.
So, we all have this great wisdom that we walk around with, but it's either been squashed out of us or denied, or not. It hasn't been shown to us. We're not. When I first got introduced to mine, I was really amazed. Like, it's been there all along. Yeah. But we come from our minds, and we respond to physical stimuli all the time. And we get caught up in these energetic fields of, here's COVID, vaccinated, unvaccinated, Black Lives Matter. Well, so does other things. And all these social things that just get us into a lower level of human consciousness that has us stressed out, et cetera, instead of dropping back and going, wait a minute, where's the love in this? What's the loving response to this? What's the accepting response to this? See the human in the human. We're all down here. We're all really challenged. We're trying to do the best we can. So I can either be part of that movement that is more destructive than productive, or I can demand of myself that I function with a different level of consciousness. And it's not being better than anybody. And it's not going around and, allowing people to do whatever it is they want to do without accountability. That's a low level of consciousness as well. But what is this elder? What can I do to contribute?
Well, I think that's a great piece of advice for our audience, if they haven't picked up on it, is that if you can establish a habit or a daily discipline, I actually, Jeff, I call it sanctuary. So sanctuary time, at least once a day. And what that means is no interruptions. The phone's off. There's no email on. You're typically alone. It's done alone, where you have some self-accountability. Now, you may choose to extend it out. Like, Lee Iacocca in his book, Iacocca, talked about every Sunday night for 2 hours, he would separate himself from the family. He'd go into the room and he'd look at his list. Okay, did I get done what I needed to get done this past week to keep the company going? What's the new information? What do I need to consider? What's my plan? What do I need to do here and then he would confirm the plan.
Mm-hmm.
He really had 2 steps. It was kind of like, what did I do last week? What do I need to do now? And I built it into 3 steps, where I call it a map agenda. But this whole concept, however you want to do it, just like you're doing it, I don't, as a society, our parents never learned this.
Mm-hmm.
And our teachers, most of us in school, never learned it. Mm-hmm. So nobody's been taught this. You just run. And the other thing I'm hearing you say, I'm just using different words that I was given, this is not my stuff, is, we have 2 primary emotions, fear and love. And if we're doing what you're saying, if you're getting all caught up in all the sound bites and all the media stuff and some narcissist, manipulating you, or, you manipulating yourself, which you're alluding to, if you're not listening to the elder, to use your term, that's fear. And it has a short-term spike, maybe in a result, but not a long-term gain.
And that's a low level of consciousness, right? So fear, love, scarcity, abundance.
Yeah.
Right. And whatever mindset I have, that's why the work that I do, I've just developed a certification class on what I call the M3 process for leadership and organizational transformation. And it's focuses on the fact that you need three aspects to transform anything. You need a new mindset. First of all, it starts with that. I have to want to be different, right?
Yeah.
It needs a new model on how I view the world and the people in it. And then it needs new methods that I can use on a tactical level. So those methods on a day-to-day basis operate within the model and manifest the mindset.
Right? And what you said earlier was your model doesn't often totally turn things upside down. But it actually, because it's actually, you didn't use this term, but it sounds like it's almost residing kind of in hibernation, or it's not getting any attention. It's kind of waving its arms in the back of the room, and you're not paying attention because that elder or that the good stuff is trying to approach you in a loving way of listen to this, watch out for that type of thing. But so your model is actually pretty easy for people to embrace if that first piece is there, that they've made a decision, hey, this isn't working, I need to do something different.
And one of the things I learned in the think tank, which was, because there were a couple of really brilliant people in there, and 2 of them really struggled because they were brilliant, but they'd get angry at the people that they were being hired to be consultants with because they weren't getting it. One guy was from Australia. I mean, he's doing phenomenal work. His name's Larry Quick. And he's wrote a book called Exponential Disruption. He's brilliant, but he's Australian. He's really impatient. And he got fired from a client, and he came in and he's like, hey, Mike, can you help me out? What am I doing wrong here? And I said, Larry, look, you're on one side of a river and you see the promised land and you live in it. Everybody you're talking to is on the other side of the river, and they don't know what you know. So if you really want to help them, you have to swim over to where they are, meet them where they are, speak to them in their language, and start building a bridge, which eventually they will start to help you to build. Then when they get over there, they'll be good to go. But if you don't have the patience to meet them where they are and give them the steps or the rungs in the ladder, then they're never going to get there. And you're also not committed to your work, because if you want to spread your work, you have to get people to a point to where they're not thinking, what the heck are you doing? So you have to make it easy for them and allow the transformation to occur. You'll get some stretch marks. You pull a hamstring, but you're not going to, it's not going to, if your work forces people to blow up what they're doing now before they've gotten into this new space, it's not well thought out. So it has to be incremental. And the good news is as they learn what they're doing, they get it and they keep it. So my clients, I teach as I go, they learn this, they start to customize this thing. It's like a martial art. I teach you katas, I teach you the principles, all that type of stuff. Then you're fully equipped to deal with yourself as conditions change around you. And then you just come to me for the harder stuff, which is even cooler to work on. So It's really about helping people to understand and customize and embrace this and make this work their own. And I'm yet to find anybody who wants to do it, who can't do it, and really surprise himself with how easy it comes. It's challenging, but it's not complicated.
Yeah, and I think for those people who are not familiar with the martial arts, how would you describe a kata? It's a series of movements, right?
Yeah, it's a move. So basically, an attacker is coming into you like this. Okay, you see this. This is how you move to counter that. So there's specific. That's what the methods are. I've got an 8-step leadership process that teaches you how to acknowledge that collective genius, how to not shut it down, how to open it, how to build it, how to grow it, how to heal it. So you learn all these different things, and depending upon what situation is occurring, this group might need to be opened, this group might need to be healed. And you might be walking into the rooms 2 hours difference from another, but you have these tools that you can use and apply that will help shift the conditions. And to me, that's what leadership is. Leadership's about creating the conditions where people will follow your direction more than your directions. Ego-based leadership is follow my directions. Elder and conscious leadership is you're functioning in a way that people are following you based on your level of consciousness. So they will follow your direction. And the direction, instead of do this, hit this metric, it's kind of included over here, but we treat each other with authenticity, integrity, and respect. We don't damage our coworker. We're looking to do good work. When we see a problem, we bring it up quickly and we deal with it. That's following my direction, not my direction, but that level of consciousness. And conscious leadership is about coming in with that consciousness, the elder consciousness. I talk about leading with air. And air is 3 things. If you do this well, because what we're talking about can feel really overwhelming. If you do these 3 things well, you're not going to mess up too bad. And if you do, you fix it quickly. Leading with air, authenticity, integrity, and respect. Authenticity is me being me and respecting my boundaries and being comfortable with that. Integrity is me being of good character out into the world, and you can depend upon me, and what you see is what you're getting. And respect is 3 parts. I respect myself and my boundaries and my desires. I respect you and yours. And we both respect the organization that's paying us. It's depending upon us to get the job done so it can continue, so everybody else can stay employed.
Fantastic.
And if you work within that, if you get out of integrity, the way you get back is just go in and go, you know what, guys, I was a knucklehead. And I mean, I own my mistakes all the time, because then I can move past them and I can learn from them. Yeah. And then as a leader, I set that expectation that that's how we do things here. So it's okay for you to do it.
No, I'm totally in sync with you. Totally agree. I think it sounds great. Jeff, if people want to learn more, you've given them a lot here in this podcast. If people want to learn more, where do they go? How do they find your book and your website and all that?
Yeah, well, it's easy. It's jeffreydeckman.com. And you can go in there, and I've got a ton of content. I've got a YouTube channel. You can go in. It links to my website, but you can also go into YouTube and type in Jeffrey Deckman. It shows up. I got a lot of short videos. Some of them are casual and funky, but all of them are designed to really make a point. There's some pretty cool videos in there. I have a blog that's on my website. I'm in LinkedIn. And you can email me, jeffrey@jeffreydeckman.com. And I'm just starting to promote that certification program. So I speak to it a bit. It's called the M3 process. I speak to it a bit on my website, but I'm revising it and improving it. So I'm just in the business of transformation. I want to help people that are out there. Small business people drive the economy and employ us all. And it's the heart and soul of America. And I want to do my small part to help those heroes, those men and women that are out there and they're putting their necks on the line every day, and they don't have a lot of support, and they're under a lot of stress. So I just want to do anything I can to, here's some things I've learned the hard way. I've packaged them and, take them. There's so many things in my blog that you read what I've written and go into Forbes and Google me and look at some of those videos. A lot of this stuff you'll pick up on your own. You won't even have to talk to me. And you can learn a lot. So,
well, that's awesome. Thanks so much for being on the show, Jeff. This has been great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the work you're doing and your service to the entrepreneur community as well. It's really important.
Thanks for tuning in today. If you liked the episode with Jeffrey, please subscribe, leave us a comment or a rating. Would love to hear from you. Don't forget, check out our sponsor site, habitly.com, 7 days free. Learn the essential people skills to thrive in your life. And stay tuned in. Got more great guests coming. Bye for now.